are going to now be talking all about cyber criminals and cyber crime. And joining us to discuss this is Paul Taylor. He is Technology and Telecoms Editor of the Financial Times. David Bannatyne is also with us. He's an Executive GM, Banking and Payment Services at the National Bank of Australia, National Australia Bank, I should say. Mark Clancy is MD of Technology Risk Management at the DTCC. And Srood Sharif is Group Chief Information Officer at the National Bank of Abu Dhabi. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us today. If I could start with you, Paul, first of all, just put the context for all of us in terms of what is actually happening now in terms of cyber crime with regards to the financial services industry. What can criminals actually do?
It is a battlefield and it's an arms race. Criminals are after money, they're after information, they're after IDs, and banks are great places to pick up all three varieties. We've also got a mixture of criminals who are motivated by money, the look, sex, and anonymous type hacktivists who are after something different, often fame but not necessarily fortune. And we've got a new breed of state-motivated hackers who have their own political agenda and who in some senses are the most threatening. But the bulk of attacks that we're seeing, or my colleagues here are seeing, are actually motivated by money, and they're the new people on the block in terms of robbing banks. They don't go in with guns, they go in with code.
Let's ask you guys, what are some of the attacks that you've seen where you are?
Sure, attacks on an internet banking and on a banking network is something that banks deal with every day. And as was just said, the challenge we have now here, it's no longer a geographical problem. It is cyber, and it doesn't happen between 9 and 4 like it used to. We don't own the loop anymore, so we've got this situation where banks can be attacked from anywhere in the world, 24 hours a day, and we have a law enforcement regime that is completely incapable of dealing with it.
So picking up on the law enforcement theme, the challenge we see is the attacks happen in minutes and seconds, and the prosecution of those happens in months and years. Right? So we've had to build a community defense model to protect ourselves from these types of attacks because they've been ongoing and aggressive. In the United States, we've seen not just the criminal threats, but now these denial of service attacks, be they by hacktivist groups or others, that are not attempting to steal, but attempting to destroy or degrade the infrastructure, and that's a fairly significant escalation.
What about in Abu Dhabi?
Cybercrime and fraud is emerging as a lucrative business, and statistics show that 2011 there were $114 billion lost based on crime and fraud. And in our case, you ask what sort of experiences we've had. There's been several denial of service attacks recently in Saudi, one of the largest oil companies, where 30,000 PCs were actually rendered useless.
Wow.
With the virus Shamoon. There were some in Qatar, Rasgas, and also, although the impact was not publicized, there are several cases a couple of years ago where credit card numbers were stolen and found in an apartment in Florida. So they'd actually even brokerage business into the crime, and where a specialized group actually, or a gang, they specialize in credit card, some espionage, political espionage, some of them maybe just competitor espionage and so on. So the motives vary from money gain, ego, or competitor business and so on.
It's really interesting. What are banks actually doing now? Just give me, you alluded to it, but give me some actual specific things that they're actually doing to guard against this so they don't fall victim to this. A few nights ago I had dinner with someone and he told me that his job, the banks actually paid him and his company to hack into them to make sure that other terrible people can't do that. So tell me about some of the things that you guys do.
So all the banks do penetration testing. We certainly have our own teams. Where we are, we've got a huge investment in the security of our systems and for our customers. I think the important thing here is the problem is, whilst the bank systems are clearly looked at by the cyber criminals, the real part is they attack the customer end. And we don't own that anymore. We used to own the loop. You had to use our proprietary banking systems, or you had to walk in our door. But with the internet and allowing financial systems to go through the internet, we have a situation now where we don't own the whole loop, and then therefore the vulnerability is on the customer end, which gives them access.
So in the United States and in Europe, there's an organization we're part of called the Financial Services Information Sharing Analysis Center. And that's where financial institutions get together to share information about the attacks that are being seen. So the first person who's a victim can be used to defend the other 4,500 other institutions that participate in that exchange.
Well, we do regular, you said you pay people to hack your system. We do regular penetration testing internally to see if there are any malicious sort of staff or employees. At the same time, we do external penetration testing. And these are sort of specialized companies who can do it from anywhere in the world. And the vulnerabilities are addressed immediately before we put these specific applications online and make it sort of available to customers. And this is a regular practice. It's not a one-time and you stop. You do that every time there's a patch upgrade or there's changes in the code and so on. And it's one way of actually making sure that you're ahead of the hackers if you can, but you try and sort of address the vulnerabilities as they come up.
I'm just going to come back to that with you because, I mean, a lot of the time you're thinking you're dealing with what you know now, but as people become more and more sophisticated, you have lots of unknowns, aren't there?
Yeah,
and how viable are you going to be then?
Absolutely, which is why it's an arms race. It is. It's us versus them, and it's a leapfrog in terms of attacks and defense and so forth. The other point that I wanted to make is that banks and other organizations are getting much smarter about the way they use the data and the information they have about customers. So for example, if they see a set of transactions in Sydney, Australia in the morning, and in the afternoon they see a transaction in Perth, then they're going to wonder, okay, did that person really make that trip, or is the second transaction a fraud? So they're getting smarter about fraud detection.
How do you think SWIFT can play a role in helping all of you guys deal with cybercrime?
Well, that's a good question. They certainly in terms of frauds that are conducted against the banks astray, if the money's moved outside the country, it will go through SWIFT. The real-time irrevocable nature of a SWIFT payment, though, is not helpful to getting it back, and so, that's so we've got a design feature that actually plays against us in terms of recovery, and the faster that payments are transmitted is actually in their favour and not in our favour. So it is a challenge. I'd be very open to suggestions of how they can help us. I'm happy to be involved in that forum.
Okay.
So I think, in keeping on my community defense theme, if there is attack information that can be shared, perhaps networks like SWIFT can make message types to send those information, so other people who the 10,000 plus people who are in SWIFT can defend themselves based on that information.
Well, SWIFT is the standard payment system that has sort of improved and added a lot of efficiency and straight-through processing to our process. It also has the maker-checker possibility, so in a way it is a secured way, channeling all your payments through a secured network, so it has helped the situation for sure.
Yeah.
Now it's not the end of the line, of course. You got to continue building other security aspects around the creation of payments. How does it come actually to the SWIFT gateway and so on?
How do you think that prosecutors can actually, because you said it takes months, it happens in a short period of time, but then it takes months to bring people to justice, etc., and even to find who these people actually are.
Most of them are never brought to justice.
So I think the focus has to include prosecution, but the main advantage is mitigation. And so law enforcement in every country has tools at their disposal to help people who are victims of these types of attacks to defend themselves, and they need to split their mission between prosecuting and helping defend. And I think that would be an effective way.
You want to come back?
Well, we do. We try and stop the attack and then report it to the authorities. Our main concern is actually to protect the systems and information we have of our customers, and then the law enforcement actually take it on and block the sites, try and catch them where they are, and sort of track them through Interpol and so on.
Okay, so we'll make sure that someone from SWIFT contacts you guys and starts having that discussion as to what they can do. Thanks very much.